If nobody on your team believes in you, would you still risk everything to save them? The question echoed through the training hangar long before anyone realized it would become the story every operator on the base would remember for years. The transport truck rolled to a stop outside Building 14 just after sunrise, its tires crunching against loose gravel as the first golden light spread across the naval installation. Sailors moved with quiet purpose between maintenance bays, while helicopters rested motionless in the distance, waiting for another day of drills and deployments. A cool Atlantic breeze carried the scent of salt water across the concrete, mixing with fresh coffee and machine oil. One by one, experienced operators stepped off the truck, carrying heavy duffel bags without saying much. Then the final passenger climbed down. Emma Carter adjusted the strap over her shoulder and took a slow look around the compound. She stood just over 5 feet 6 inches tall, wearing the same combat uniform as everyone else, her boots already dusty from travel. Nothing about her appearance demanded attention. Her blonde hair was secured in a regulation bun beneath her patrol cap, and her expression revealed nothing beyond quiet focus. She did not scan the crowd looking for approval. She simply picked up her second bag and walked toward the headquarters building as if she had done it 1,000 times before. Conversation slowed. Eyes followed her. Some soldiers exchanged quick glances before returning to unloading equipment. Others were less discreet. One whispered something that caused 2 nearby teammates to laugh under their breath. Emma heard every word, but her pace never changed. Captain Daniel Brooks stood near the entrance reviewing personnel files on a digital tablet. At 39 years old, he had earned a reputation for building disciplined teams that trusted each other completely. He believed every new operator deserved a fair opportunity before judgment. Even so, he knew the transfer standing only a few yards away would test that belief inside his own unit. He stepped forward and extended his hand. Petty Officer Emma Carter? Emma accepted the handshake with calm confidence. Yes, sir. Welcome to Echo Team. Glad to be here. Daniel noticed something unusual immediately. Most new arrivals tried to impress their commanding officer with stories, confidence, or carefully rehearsed introductions. Emma offered none of that. She spoke clearly, maintained eye contact, and waited for instructions. Behind Daniel, several operators quietly gathered outside the equipment room. That's the replacement, one muttered. They've got to be kidding. Another crossed his arms. We're preparing for deployment, not orientation. A third shook his head slowly. No offense, but this isn't going to last a week. Daniel heard enough to understand the mood. He closed the tablet without reacting. Team briefing in 15 minutes, he called out. Conference room. The group dispersed, though not before a few skeptical looks landed on Emma again. She calmly lifted her bags and followed Daniel through the building. The hallway walls displayed photographs of previous deployments, framed unit citations, and team portraits stretching back decades. Every face represented years of sacrifice, discipline, and trust. Emma paused for only a second in front of one faded photograph before continuing. Daniel noticed. Recognize someone? No, sir, she answered. Just thinking about what it takes to earn a place on that wall. Daniel nodded without replying. The conference room gradually filled with operators dressed in matching uniforms, coffee mugs resting beside notebooks and mission folders. Emma quietly selected the last available chair near the end of the table. Nobody invited her to sit closer. Nobody introduced themselves. Several continued conversations as if she were invisible. One operator deliberately slid a folder into the empty chair beside him before Emma reached it, forcing her farther away without saying a word. She simply chose another seat. Daniel walked to the front of the room and activated the large digital display showing Echo Team's upcoming training cycle. Listen up. Starting today, Petty Officer Emma Carter is assigned to this team. Silence followed. Then someone near the back spoke just loudly enough for everyone to hear. Hope she can keep up. A few restrained chuckles spread across the room. Emma neither smiled nor frowned. She opened a blank notebook and waited. Daniel looked across the table. Any concerns should stay professional. Nobody answered. But the message hanging in the room was unmistakable. Before Emma had completed a single drill, before anyone had seen her run, climb, think, or lead under pressure, the decision had already been made for her. She was the outsider. She was the question mark. She was the teammate nobody wanted. And not one person in that room could imagine that before long, every single one of them would owe their lives, their pride, and their understanding of true respect to the quiet woman sitting alone at the far end of the table. The briefing ended with the scrape of chairs across the polished floor as the operators filed toward the training yard without waiting for one another. Emma Carter quietly gathered her notebook and stood with the same measured confidence she had carried since arriving that morning. Nobody slowed down for her. Nobody asked her name. Captain Daniel Brooks watched from the doorway as the team naturally formed into familiar groups, leaving only one person walking alone across the concrete. He had seen this pattern before whenever a new operator joined an established unit, but this time the distance seemed wider than usual. Outside, the early sun had burned away the morning fog, revealing obstacle towers, climbing walls, and rows of equipment spread across the massive training complex. A whistle echoed across the base as several units began their daily exercises. Echo Team moved toward a gear station where helmets, weighted packs, ropes, and communication equipment had already been organized. Sergeant Ryan Mitchell tossed a training vest toward one of the operators before glancing at Emma. "You know where everything goes?" he asked. "Yes," Emma answered calmly. Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Good. We do not have time for orientation." A few nearby teammates exchanged amused smiles. Emma picked up her assigned equipment without another word, carefully checking every strap and buckle before slipping the vest over her shoulders. Her movements were smooth and practiced, but nobody seemed interested enough to notice. Instead, conversations continued around her as though she occupied empty space. During the first navigation drill, the team divided into pairs. Daniel read the assignments from his clipboard. Before he finished, one operator interrupted. "Captain, can I switch partners?" Daniel looked up. "Reason? I have trained with Cooper for years. We work faster together." Another voice followed immediately. "Same here." Then another. Within seconds, every experienced operator had found an excuse to avoid being paired with Emma. Daniel paused, fully aware that the requests had nothing to do with efficiency. Finally, he folded the clipboard shut. "Emma works with me." Nobody objected, although the silence carried its own message. The drill required each pair to move through a complex route using only map coordinates and visual landmarks. Daniel deliberately allowed Emma to take the lead. She studied the map for only a few seconds before pointing toward a narrow trail between two maintenance buildings. "This route saves almost 300 yards, she said quietly. Daniel glanced at the map again. She was right. They reached every checkpoint several minutes ahead of the other pairs. When the rest of the team finally arrived, Ryan looked surprised. "Lucky guess," someone muttered. Another operator shrugged. "Anybody could have picked that path." Emma said nothing. She simply handed the map back to Daniel. Throughout the morning, the pattern repeated itself. During equipment inspections, another teammate quietly replaced Emma's organized supplies with items scattered out of order while she stepped away for water. She returned, calmly reorganized everything without complaint, and completed the inspection before anyone else. "She probably memorized the checklist," someone whispered. During a communications exercise, an operator intentionally spoke over Emma each time she attempted to answer a technical question. After the instructor repeated the same question directly to her, Emma explained the solution clearly and correctly in less than 30 seconds. Instead of acknowledging her answer, another teammate laughed softly. "Must have read the manual all night." Daniel noticed every exchange. He also noticed something far more unusual. Emma never defended herself. She never argued. She never rolled her eyes or answered sarcasm with sarcasm. Every criticism seemed to disappear into silence before it could grow into conflict. During the lunch break, the team gathered around a long outdoor table beneath a shade canopy. Stories filled the air as operators joked about previous training cycles and memorable mistakes. Emma carried her tray toward the open seats. Just before she arrived, one operator casually placed his backpack across the final empty chair. Without hesitation, she changed direction and chose a small table overlooking the obstacle course. She ate quietly while reviewing the afternoon schedule folded beside her tray. Daniel approached with his coffee and stopped beside the table. "Mind if I join you?" Emma looked up with a polite smile. "Of course not, sir." For several moments, neither of them spoke. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "You have had a long first day." Emma nodded once. "Yes, sir." Anything you want to say? She looked across the field where the rest of the team laughed together. Respect cannot be requested, Captain. It has to arrive on its own. Daniel studied her expression. There was no bitterness in her voice, only certainty. Before he could respond, the training alarm sounded across the base, calling Echo Team back to the field. The afternoon schedule was about to begin, and none of them realized that the quiet woman they continued to overlook had already begun earning something far more valuable than acceptance. She was earning the opportunity to prove every assumption wrong through actions that could not be ignored. The afternoon sun settled high above the training grounds as Echo Team assembled near the confidence course, a sprawling network of climbing structures, balance beams, rope bridges, and navigation stations designed to test judgment more than strength. Captain Daniel Brooks stood beside the course with a stopwatch in one hand and a clipboard in the other. "This exercise is simple," he said. "Complete every station as a team. Speed matters, but teamwork matters more." Several operators exchanged confident smiles. They had completed similar courses dozens of times together. Ryan Mitchell glanced toward Emma Carter before adjusting the straps on his pack. "As long as everyone can keep up," he said with a grin that earned a few quiet laughs. Emma heard the remark, but continued checking the buckles on her equipment. She had developed a habit over the past day. Whenever someone expected a reaction, she offered none. Daniel divided the team into two groups. Emma remained with Ryan, Cooper Hayes, Mason Walker, and another experienced operator named Tyler Grant. The assignment immediately produced visible disappointment. Ryan folded his arms. "Captain, would not it make more sense to balance the experience?" Daniel answered without hesitation. "Experience grows by working together." Ryan nodded politely, although the expression on his face suggested he completely disagreed. At the starting signal, the teams moved toward the first station. It required every member to transport equipment across a narrow elevated platform without dropping any supplies. Cooper immediately took charge, assigning positions before Emma even reached the obstacle. "Just stay in the back," he told her. "Do not slow us down." Emma simply nodded. She carried her assigned pack across the platform with steady, controlled steps while the others rushed ahead. When Mason hurried his footing, one of the equipment bags slipped from his shoulder and nearly fell over the edge. Emma reached forward, caught the strap with one hand, and quietly steadied the load before anyone lost balance. Mason barely looked at her. "I had it," he muttered. "Of course," Emma replied. She released the strap and continued walking. At the second station, the team faced a navigation puzzle requiring them to arrange numbered markers into the correct sequence before advancing. Cooper confidently began moving the pieces. Emma studied the layout for several seconds before speaking. "The sequence starts from the opposite corner." Ryan laughed softly. "We are fine." 2 minutes later, the instructor blew a whistle. "Incorrect. Start over." Cooper frowned at the board. Emma remained silent. Daniel watched from across the field, noticing that she never repeated herself after being ignored. Eventually, Tyler examined the arrangement more carefully. "Wait," he said. She was right. They reset the markers exactly as Emma had first suggested. This time the signal light turned green immediately. Nobody apologized. Ryan simply picked up his pack and moved toward the next station as though the delay had happened on its own. The final challenge required every team member to carry weighted supply cases across uneven terrain before assembling a portable communications array. The cases weighed nearly 60 pounds each. Ryan deliberately slid the heaviest one toward Emma. "Think you can handle this?" he asked. Emma looked at the case, then lifted it in one smooth motion without changing her expression. She adjusted the weight against her shoulder and began walking at a steady pace. One by one, the others accelerated, determined to finish ahead of her. After several hundred yards, the path narrowed between two rocky slopes. Cooper reached the assembly area first and immediately began connecting equipment. Mason followed. Ryan arrived moments later. They waited impatiently. "Where is she now?" Ryan asked. Tyler pointed back down the trail. Emma was approaching with 2 cases instead of 1. Along the route, she had noticed that another team's equipment had slipped from a transport cart, delaying their progress. Without being asked, she had quietly carried one of their cases along with her own. She placed both containers beside the communications station before catching her breath. Ryan stared for a moment. "You carried 2?" Emma loosened her gloves. "They needed help." Cooper shook his head dismissively. Anybody can carry extra weight for a few hundred yards. Daniel heard the exchange from only a few feet away. He said nothing, but he noticed another detail the others completely missed. Emma was breathing calmly, while several experienced operators struggled to recover after carrying only one case. The instructor announced the final scores. Echo Team had finished second overall, missing first place by less than 1 minute because of a navigation delay. As the operators gathered their equipment, Tyler quietly approached Emma. "About that puzzle earlier," he said. Emma looked at him. "Yes." Tyler hesitated before speaking. "You saw the answer immediately." Emma smiled politely. "Sometimes the fastest path is the one nobody looks at first." Tyler nodded thoughtfully before walking away. It was the first conversation anyone on the team had started with her without sarcasm. Ryan noticed the exchange and called everyone together. "Tomorrow we run another full cycle," he announced. "No mistakes." His eyes briefly settled on Emma before turning away again. Yet something had changed, even if only slightly. The certainty that she did not belong had begun to crack. Not because she argued, not because she demanded respect, but because every challenge designed to expose weakness somehow revealed quiet strength instead, and even the loudest skeptics were slowly running out of ways to explain it away. The next morning arrived with heavy gray clouds rolling over the coastline as a cool wind swept across the training compound. Echo Team assembled before sunrise beside a row of transport vehicles, each operator wearing a full training pack and carrying enough equipment for a full day in the field. Captain Daniel Brooks stood in front of the group, holding a sealed folder instead of his usual clipboard. His expression immediately caught everyone's attention. The casual conversation stopped. Even Ryan Mitchell folded his arms and waited. Daniel opened the folder slowly before looking across the team. "Today's schedule has changed," he said. "Training Command has approved an extended field evaluation. You will operate exactly as you would during an actual deployment. Every decision counts. Every mistake carries consequences for the final evaluation." Several operators exchanged excited smiles. They had been waiting for an opportunity like this for months. Ryan looked toward Cooper Hayes with quiet confidence. "Now we finally get to show what this team can really do." His eyes briefly shifted toward Emma Carter before returning to Daniel. The unspoken message remained obvious. Everyone expected the evaluation to prove what they already believed about their newest teammate. Within minutes, the team climbed aboard 2 tactical transport vehicles and headed toward a remote training area several miles away from the main installation. The road wound through dense pine forest before opening into rugged coastal terrain filled with steep hills, rocky paths, abandoned utility buildings, and communication towers left behind from previous military exercises. The location had been carefully designed to imitate the uncertainty of real operations without placing anyone in actual danger. As the vehicles stopped, instructors waiting at the site handed Daniel a mission packet. He read it quietly before addressing the team. "Your objective is to locate a simulated rescue point, establish secure communications, recover essential equipment, and return before sunset. The route is not marked. You will solve every obstacle with the resources you carry." Ryan immediately stepped beside Daniel. "Captain, I recommend Cooper handles navigation." Daniel looked around the group. "Suggestions?" Nobody spoke except Emma. She remained silent, studying the terrain stretching toward the distant hills where low clouds drifted across the treetops. Daniel noticed. "Emma." She lifted her eyes. "The weather is changing faster than expected, sir. If the wind continues shifting from the east, the lower trails may become difficult to cross later today." Ryan smiled politely. "We have used those trails for years." Cooper nodded. "There is no reason to complicate a simple route." Daniel considered both opinions for a moment before making his decision. "We stay with the original plan." Emma answered with a calm nod. "Understood, sir." The team began moving through the wooded landscape at a steady pace. Tall pine trees blocked much of the morning sunlight, while fallen branches covered sections of the narrow trail. Birds scattered overhead as the operators advanced deeper into the training zone. Emma remained near the rear, exactly where Ryan repeatedly positioned her. She carried extra batteries, emergency medical supplies, and communications equipment without complaint. Every few minutes, she quietly observed the changing sky. The wind continued growing stronger. By late morning, the first challenge appeared. According to the mission packet, The team needed to activate a portable relay station hidden somewhere inside an abandoned observation building. Cooper confidently led everyone toward the structure using the printed map. After nearly 20 minutes of searching, frustration spread across the group. The relay station was nowhere inside the building. Ryan removed his gloves with obvious irritation. The coordinates have to be wrong. Emma slowly unfolded her own map. May I see the mission packet? Ryan hesitated before handing it over. She compared the printed instructions with the surrounding terrain for less than a minute. Then she quietly pointed toward a weathered maintenance tower nearly 200 yards away. The relay station is probably there. Cooper frowned. Why? Emma traced one small symbol on the map with her finger. This reference marker identifies the original observation building. The structure we entered was built later during a renovation. The mission designers used the older map. Daniel studied both maps carefully before looking toward the distant tower. Move. 5 minutes later, the team entered the maintenance tower. The relay station sat exactly where Emma had predicted. Silence filled the room. Ryan slowly glanced toward Cooper before looking away without saying anything. Nobody admitted she had solved the problem. Nobody needed to. As the relay equipment powered on, a transmission reached Daniel's headset. New mission update. Simulated weather conditions are changing. Expect additional navigation challenges. Daniel looked through the tower window toward the darkening horizon. The clouds Emma had noticed hours earlier now covered almost the entire coastline. A cold gust rattled the loose metal panels attached to the building. Tyler Grant quietly stepped beside Emma while the others prepared the equipment. You knew this was coming, he said. Emma watched the trees bending beneath the strengthening wind. No, she answered softly. I only knew we should pay attention before everyone else had to. Tyler nodded without speaking again. Outside, the first distant roll of thunder echoed beyond the hills. It was only part of the exercise, but the changing conditions forced every operator to adjust quickly. Daniel folded the updated mission packet and looked toward the next objective marked several miles farther across the rugged landscape. None of them realized that the most difficult part of the evaluation had not even begun, and the quiet voice so many had ignored would soon become the one every member of Echo Team would desperately need to hear. Echo Team left the maintenance tower with renewed urgency as the afternoon sky continued to darken overhead. The wind that had once drifted gently through the pine trees now swept steadily across the hills, carrying fallen leaves and loose branches over the narrow trail. Captain Daniel Brooks checked the updated mission packet one more time before folding it into a waterproof pocket. According to the next phase of the evaluation, the team had to reach a designated extraction zone before sunset while transporting the communications relay they had just recovered. It was designed to measure endurance, planning, and teamwork under increasing pressure. Daniel gathered everyone together. From this point forward, we move as one unit. Nobody gets left behind. We finish together. Every operator answered with a quick nod. Emma Carter quietly adjusted the relay pack across her shoulders. It was one of the heaviest loads in the group, yet she accepted it without hesitation. Ryan Mitchell noticed and shrugged. At least now we will find out how long that confidence lasts. Emma did not respond. She simply stepped into position near the rear as instructed. The team followed a rocky trail climbing toward higher ground where the extraction point was marked on the map. For nearly an hour, the pace remained steady. Boots crunched across loose gravel while the distant sound of the surf echoed against the cliffs beyond the trees. Several operators joked with one another as they climbed, convinced the most difficult part of the evaluation was already behind them. Then everything changed. Cooper Hayes stopped suddenly at the edge of a steep ridgeline. The marked trail ahead had disappeared beneath a large section of loose rock and fallen timber. Bright warning flags identified it as an unexpected route closure placed there by the instructors. Daniel unfolded the map immediately. Alternate route. Ryan searched the surrounding terrain. There should be one. Tyler Grant pointed toward the valley below. That path adds at least 2 miles. Mason Walker frowned. We will never reach the extraction point before the deadline. Silence settled over the group as each operator studied the terrain from a different angle. The clock continued running. Every minute mattered. Daniel examined the map again, but none of the printed options looked promising. The lower trail was longer. The northern route crossed unstable ground. The western approach disappeared into thick forest with no visible landmarks. For the first time since the evaluation began, nobody had an answer. Ryan broke the silence. "Captain, we choose the valley and move fast." Cooper shook his head. "That will cost too much time." Mason pointed toward the blocked ridge. "Maybe we clear the path." Tyler measured the fallen trees with his eyes. "That could take hours." Each suggestion only created another problem. Frustration quietly spread across the team. Daniel remained calm, but he understood the situation. Every decision carried consequences, and the evaluation had reached exactly the point the instructors intended. Emma stood several feet away, studying not the map but the landscape itself. She watched the wind bending the tops of the pine trees. She looked toward a narrow line of exposed stone running along the side of the ridge before shifting her attention to an older maintenance cable anchored high above the blocked trail. It had probably been installed years earlier for construction crews. Nobody else seemed to notice it. Daniel finally looked toward her. "Emma." She turned. "Sir, you have been quiet." She hesitated only briefly. "I think there is another option." Every head turned in her direction. Ryan folded his arms. "Here we go." Emma ignored the remark. She pointed toward the rocky slope rising above the obstruction. "The ridge continues another 200 feet above us. There is a natural ledge connecting to the opposite side. It is narrow, but it avoids the blocked trail completely." Cooper looked where she pointed before shaking his head. "Nobody uses that route." Emma answered calmly. "Probably because nobody looks for it." Ryan gave a short laugh. "And you expect the entire team to cross that?" Emma met his eyes without raising her voice. "Only if we want to stay on schedule." Daniel studied the ridgeline carefully through a pair of compact binoculars. After several long seconds, he lowered them again. A faint outline of the stone ledge was visible exactly where Emma had described. It was not marked on the map because it was not an official trail. Tyler looked at Daniel. "Can it work?" Daniel continued watching the ridge. "Maybe." Ryan immediately objected. "Captain, that is a risk." Daniel slowly nodded. "So is every other option we have." The team stood in complete silence as the wind continued rising around them. Nobody laughed anymore. Nobody dismissed Emma's observation outright. For the first time since she had joined Echo Team, every experienced operator waited for Captain Brooks to decide whether the quiet teammate they had spent days overlooking might actually be the only person who could lead them forward. Captain Daniel Brooks lowered the binoculars and looked from the narrow stone ledge back to the faces of his team. Nobody spoke. The wind rushed across the ridge, carrying the sound of distant waves crashing against the shoreline far below. Every operator understood that hesitation alone could cost valuable time. Daniel finally made his decision. "We take Emma's route." Ryan Mitchell looked stunned. "Captain, that path is not even on the map." Daniel calmly folded the binoculars and clipped them to his vest. "Neither is the obstacle blocking our original route. We adapt. That is what this evaluation is measuring." Ryan opened his mouth as if to argue again, but Daniel raised one hand. "Discussion is over. Emma, you lead." For the first time since arriving at Echo Team, every pair of eyes focused entirely on Emma Carter. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. She simply nodded once and walked toward the rocky slope. Her pace remained steady as she studied the natural handholds carved into the weathered stone. The narrow ledge stretched across the hillside like a forgotten pathway created by time rather than design. It was only wide enough for one person at a time, but the surface looked stable. Emma carefully tested the first section with her boot before turning back toward the team. "Keep 3 points of contact whenever possible. Stay 5 feet apart. Do not rush. The rock is solid if you trust your footing." Cooper Hayes quietly exchanged a glance with Tyler Grant. Only yesterday nobody had wanted to follow Emma anywhere. Now they waited for her instructions before taking a single step. Emma crossed first, carrying the heavy communications relay on her back without asking anyone to take the weight. She moved with patient confidence, never hurrying, occasionally brushing away loose gravel so the next person would have a safer path. Halfway across, she stopped beside an old maintenance cable anchored into the rock decades earlier. She examined the weathered hardware, gently tested its stability, and threaded a safety rope through the remaining support points. "This will give everyone extra balance," she called back. Daniel watched quietly. The cable had blended so naturally into the cliff that none of the others had even noticed it. One by one, the operators followed her route. Ryan remained skeptical at first, but after reaching the midpoint, he realized the ledge was far more secure than it had appeared from below. Tyler smiled to himself. She saw all of this from 200 yards away. Cooper shook his head slowly, unable to explain it. Near the far end of the crossing, Mason Walker slowed unexpectedly as the weight of his overloaded pack shifted awkwardly against one shoulder. He quickly regained his footing, but one equipment pouch slipped loose and tumbled onto a lower shelf of rocks several yards beneath the trail. Mason looked down with frustration. That relay battery is part of the mission kit. Ryan frowned. We do not have time. Emma carefully secured her own pack before studying the terrain below. The pouch had landed safely on a broad section of stone only a short distance away, but reaching it required using another narrow natural step hidden beneath the ledge. Without hesitation, she clipped her safety line into the old cable, descended carefully, recovered the pouch, and climbed back using the same route she had identified moments earlier. The entire process took less than 2 minutes. She handed the equipment back to Mason as though nothing unusual had happened. "Thank you," he said quietly. It was the first sincere expression of gratitude anyone on the team had offered her. Emma simply nodded. "We still have a mission to finish." As the last operator stepped onto stable ground, Daniel checked his watch. Instead of losing time, the team had actually regained several minutes compared with the valley route. Ryan looked back toward the blocked trail, now hidden behind the ridge. He said nothing. For perhaps the first time in his career, confidence alone had not solved the problem. Observation had. The team continued across the upper ridge where the clouds slowly began to break apart, allowing narrow beams of afternoon sunlight to fall across the coastline. The extraction marker soon appeared in the distance beside a weathered communications tower. Instructors standing nearby exchanged surprised looks as Echo Team approached well ahead of the projected arrival time. One evaluator quietly checked the route log before looking toward Daniel. "Which approach did your team use?" Daniel glanced at Emma before answering. "The one we almost ignored." The evaluator smiled with genuine curiosity. "Interesting choice. No team has selected that route during this exercise." Ryan overheard the conversation and slowly lowered his eyes. The realization settled heavily across the entire group. The impossible solution had never depended on extraordinary strength. It had depended on seeing what everyone else overlooked, trusting careful judgment over loud confidence, and quietly stepping forward when nobody else believed the path even existed. As Echo Team reached the extraction point together, the silence surrounding Emma no longer carried doubt. It carried something unfamiliar, something that had been missing since the moment she stepped off the transport truck. It was the first unmistakable sign of respect. The instructors recorded the final arrival time before directing Echo Team toward a temporary operations shelter overlooking the coastline. The evaluation was not over yet. The relay equipment still had to be assembled, calibrated, and connected before the mission could be considered complete. Captain Daniel Brooks placed the communications cases on a folding table while the rest of the team caught their breath. The atmosphere felt completely different from only a few hours earlier. Nobody laughed. Nobody whispered. The silence now came from reflection rather than doubt. Daniel opened the final instruction packet and looked around the room. "We have one last task. The relay must be fully operational within 20 minutes. Ryan Mitchell stepped toward the equipment with renewed determination. "Cooper and I will handle it." Before Daniel could answer, the evaluator quietly spoke from the doorway. "One condition. The team leader may assign only one operator to direct the setup. Everyone else follows instructions." Daniel looked from Ryan to Cooper before his eyes settled on Emma Carter. She stood beside the window, calmly cleaning the dust from her gloves after carrying the relay across the ridge. She showed no sign that she expected to be chosen. In fact, she appeared perfectly comfortable remaining unnoticed once again. Daniel made his decision without hesitation. "Emma, you have command of this phase." Ryan looked surprised. Cooper blinked twice as if he had misheard the order. Emma simply nodded once. "Yes, sir." She walked toward the equipment table and quietly studied every component laid out before her. Instead of rushing into the assembly, she spent several moments organizing the cases by sequence. "Tyler, please connect the primary power unit. Mason, prepare the antenna support. Ryan, I need the signal amplifier unpacked, but do not connect it yet. Cooper, Help me verify the cable lengths. Her voice remained calm, clear, and respectful. There was no trace of pride or revenge. She issued instructions exactly as though the previous days had never happened. The team immediately followed her directions. Nobody interrupted. Nobody questioned her decisions. Within minutes, the relay tower began taking shape with surprising efficiency. Daniel stood several feet away observing every interaction. What impressed him most was not Emma's technical knowledge. It was the effect she suddenly had on the team. The same operators who had ignored her suggestions now listened carefully to every sentence. The same men who had refused to partner with her now anticipated her next instruction before she spoke. Halfway through the setup, an indicator light failed to activate. Ryan frowned. The amplifier is defective. Emma stepped beside the control panel and examined the display without touching anything immediately. After a brief pause, she smiled faintly. Nothing is defective. She rotated one connector less than a quarter turn before asking Tyler to restore power. Every indicator switched from amber to green at once. The evaluator quietly glanced toward Daniel before making another note on his clipboard. Interesting, he murmured. 10 minutes later, the relay completed its startup sequence. A clear confirmation tone echoed through the shelter as the communication screen displayed a successful connection. The evaluator checked his stopwatch and smiled. Fastest completion today. Ryan slowly removed his gloves and looked across the table at Emma. How did you know about the connector? Emma answered honestly. The manufacturer changed the locking mechanism last year. It looks connected before it actually is. Cooper stared at her with genuine curiosity. How many of these systems have you worked with? Emma hesitated for only a moment. Enough to know they usually fail because people hurry instead of paying attention. Nobody laughed this time. The evaluator closed his clipboard and addressed the group. This concludes your field evaluation. Congratulations. The instructors stepped outside to prepare transportation back to the main installation, leaving Echo Team alone inside the shelter for the first time all day. The room remained unusually quiet until Tyler finally broke the silence. Emma, he said, back at the maintenance tower, on the ridge, and now here. You kept solving problems the rest of us never even noticed. Emma looked at him with the same calm expression she had carried since arriving at the base. Everyone notices different things. Ryan slowly shook his head. No, we noticed you. We just refused to believe what we were seeing. Those words lingered in the room longer than anyone expected. Captain Daniel Brooks understood exactly why. They were not admitting that Emma had outperformed them in a single exercise. They were admitting that they had judged a teammate before giving her the chance to earn their trust. Daniel reached into the mission folder resting on the table and removed a sealed personnel envelope that had remained unopened throughout the evaluation. He had deliberately ignored it until now because he wanted the team to judge Emma by her actions rather than her history. He quietly opened the envelope and reviewed the documents inside. After a few seconds, he looked up with a thoughtful smile. The file confirmed everything he had already begun to suspect. Emma had completed advanced assignments, earned specialized certifications, and received commendations that most operators spent entire careers pursuing. Yet she had never mentioned a single one. Daniel closed the folder again without reading another line aloud. There was no need. The most important record of Emma Carter's ability had already been written where everyone in the room could see it. It existed in every challenge she had solved, every complaint she had ignored, every teammate she had quietly helped, and every impossible path she had transformed into the only way forward. At that moment, no document, no medal, and no official report could have earned more respect than the example she had already set with nothing more than quiet competence and unwavering character. The transport vehicles rolled back through the front gate just before sunset, as warm orange light stretched across the parade grounds. Echo Team climbed down in complete silence, each operator carrying the same equipment they had loaded before sunrise. Yet somehow every pack seemed lighter than it had that morning. The evaluation had ended, but something far more important had changed during the long day in the field. Captain Daniel Brooks dismissed the team for equipment maintenance before the official debriefing scheduled later that evening. One by one, the operators headed toward the supply building. This time, however, nobody walked ahead of Emma Carter or left her behind. Without anyone mentioning it, the spacing between teammates had disappeared. Ryan Mitchell carried one of the heavier communications cases beside her without being asked. Cooper Hayes held the equipment room door open as Emma entered. Mason Walker quietly placed the recovered relay battery onto the inspection table before looking toward her. I almost lost this because I stopped paying attention, he admitted. You noticed before I did. Emma simply smiled. That is why teams work together. Mason lowered his eyes for a moment. I should have listened to you much earlier. She answered with the same calm voice she had used throughout the evaluation. What matters is that you are listening now. There was no trace of bitterness in her words. No satisfaction. No attempt to remind anyone how they had treated her. That simple response somehow made the silence inside the equipment room even heavier. Ryan slowly placed his gloves on the table and turned toward Emma. For a long moment, he searched for the right words. He had always believed confidence meant speaking first, deciding first, leading first. Today, someone had quietly challenged every one of those assumptions without raising her voice even once. Emma, he finally said, I owe you an apology. The room became perfectly still. Tyler Grant looked up from the maintenance bench. Cooper stopped cleaning his gear. Even Captain Brooks, standing near the doorway completing paperwork, remained silent. Ryan took a slow breath. From the moment you arrived, I decided you did not belong here. I never gave you the chance to prove yourself. I ignored your ideas. I questioned your ability. I treated you like a problem instead of a teammate. He paused before continuing. I was wrong. Emma looked directly at him. Thank you for saying that. Ryan gave a small nod. You could have let every one of us fail today. That would have meant the team failed, Emma answered. I was never interested in that. Those words settled deeply across the room. Cooper quietly stepped forward next. I kept thinking experience automatically meant I had the best answer. He laughed softly at himself. Turns out experience does not matter much if you stop observing. Tyler smiled. I think we all learned that lesson. Mason extended his hand toward Emma. Welcome to Echo Team. Emma accepted the handshake with quiet gratitude. Thank you. One by one, the others did the same. There was nothing ceremonial about the moment. No speeches. No applause. Just simple handshakes between professionals who finally saw one another as equals. Captain Brooks watched everything unfold without interrupting. He had deliberately refused to force respect through orders because he understood something every experienced leader eventually learned. Respect given by command often disappeared as quickly as it arrived. Respect earned through character stayed long after the mission ended. Later that evening, Echo Team gathered inside the briefing room for the official evaluation review. The same conference table that had felt cold and divided only 2 days earlier now carried an entirely different atmosphere. Emma entered last, expecting to choose the seat at the far end as she always had. Before she could sit down, Ryan quietly moved his notebook away from the chair beside him. This seat is open, he said. Cooper smiled. You earned a better view than the corner. Emma hesitated briefly before accepting the invitation. Captain Brooks noticed the change immediately. Nobody had instructed them to make room. Nobody had asked them to include her. The decision belonged entirely to the team. Daniel opened the evaluation summary and looked around the table. Every mission teaches something different, he began. Sometimes we improve our planning. Sometimes we improve our communication. This evaluation taught something far more important. He closed the folder again without reading the final scores. The strongest team is not built by assuming who deserves trust. It is built by giving every teammate the opportunity to earn it. His eyes briefly met Emma's before moving across the rest of the room. No one argued. No one looked away. Every operator understood that the lesson had cost nothing except pride. Yet it had transformed the team more completely than any physical exercise ever could. As the meeting ended and the operators prepared for another day of training ahead, Emma quietly gathered her notebook exactly as she had on her first morning. The difference was that this time she did not walk out of the room alone. Ryan, Cooper, Tyler, and Mason naturally fell into step beside her, discussing tomorrow's schedule as though she had always been part of the conversation. Without realizing it, Echo Team had finally become what it was always meant to be, not because one person demanded acceptance, but because everyone else had finally learned how to recognize quiet excellence when it stood right beside them. The weeks that followed transformed Echo Team in ways no formal evaluation could ever measure. Morning runs began before sunrise as they always had, boots striking the pavement in steady rhythm while the first light reached across the base. The obstacle courses remained demanding. The navigation drills remained complex. The expectations never became easier. Yet something fundamental had changed. For the first time since Emma Carter arrived, every challenge truly belonged to the entire team instead of a collection of individuals trying to prove themselves. During planning sessions, Ryan Mitchell no longer spoke first simply because he was the loudest voice in the room. He listened before offering his opinion. Cooper Hayes checked every map twice instead of assuming experience alone guaranteed the correct answer. Mason Walker paid closer attention to the teammates working beside him than to his own performance. Tyler Grant often found himself smiling whenever someone suggested an unusual solution, because he had learned that the least obvious path sometimes became the best one. Captain Daniel Brooks noticed every small change. The strongest improvement was not reflected in faster completion times or higher evaluation scores. It appeared in ordinary moments. Operators automatically shared equipment before anyone asked. They exchanged ideas instead of competing for recognition. They corrected mistakes without embarrassment because trust had replaced pride. Emma never attempted to become the center of attention. She still arrived early each morning. She still inspected her gear with quiet precision. She still spoke only when she believed her words could help the team. If someone asked a question, she answered honestly. If someone needed assistance, she offered it without expecting praise. Nothing about her personality changed after earning everyone's respect, because she had never been working to earn admiration in the first place. She had simply been doing her job. One afternoon, several weeks after the field evaluation, a fresh group of operators arrived at the base for advanced training. Echo Team happened to be organizing equipment outside the headquarters building when the transport vehicle stopped near the entrance. A young operator stepped down carrying 2 heavy duffel bags while several unfamiliar faces quietly observed him from a distance. The uncertainty in his expression reminded Daniel Brooks of another morning not very long ago. Before Daniel could say anything, Ryan walked across the pavement and lifted one of the bags from the new arrival's shoulder. "Welcome," he said with an easy smile. "Let us show you where everything is." Cooper opened the building door. Mason pointed toward the briefing room. Tyler introduced himself before asking the new operator's name. Emma watched the scene unfold from several feet away before Daniel stepped beside her. "Looks different now," he said quietly. Emma nodded. "Yes, sir." Daniel smiled. "You changed this team." Emma looked toward the operators helping their newest teammate settle in. "I do not think I changed them." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "No." She shook her head gently. "They chose to change themselves." Daniel considered those words for several moments because he knew they were true. Leadership could create opportunities. Training could develop skill. Experience could build confidence. But character always remained a personal decision. Echo Team had not become stronger because one remarkable operator joined their ranks. They had become stronger because every member eventually decided that humility mattered more than ego and that respect belonged to actions instead of assumptions. Later that evening, the sun slowly disappeared beneath the horizon as the American flag continued to wave above the quiet base. The day's final training session ended, and the operators walked back toward their barracks, discussing tomorrow's schedule. Emma found herself surrounded by teammates asking for her opinion about navigation techniques, equipment preparation, and route planning. Not because she demanded authority. Not because anyone ordered them to listen. They asked because trust had replaced doubt. Captain Brooks remained outside for a few extra moments, watching the team disappear down the walkway together. He remembered the first day Emma stepped off the transport truck carrying 2 bags while whispers followed her across the concrete. He remembered the empty chair at the conference table, the sarcastic remarks, the ignored suggestions, and the quiet determination that never disappeared from her eyes. None of those moments had defined her. They had only revealed the assumptions of everyone around her. What ultimately defined Emma Carter was the same quality she possessed from the beginning until the end. She never wasted energy proving people wrong. She invested that energy in doing the next right thing with discipline, patience, and integrity. In the end, no dramatic speech changed Echo Team. No hidden record created respect. No order from a commanding officer forced acceptance. The transformation happened because one quiet professional consistently chose excellence over recognition, teamwork over pride, and service over personal validation. Long after the evaluation reports were archived and the training scores were forgotten, the lesson remained with every member of Echo Team. Never decide what someone is capable of before giving them the opportunity to show you. True respect cannot be demanded, borrowed, or assigned. It is earned through consistent character, steady actions, and the courage to keep moving forward even when nobody believes in you yet.